Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to call to order the Planning and Zoning meeting, September 16th, regular meeting. And I guess our television producer is up there and all set, and hope the camera is rolling. I want to call to order, and I want the roll call, please, from the Secretary.
Mrs. Anita Protos. Mr. Jacob Carr.
Here.
Mr. Stavropoulos. Mr. Gialusis.
Here.
Ms. St. Arnold. Mr. Delacca.
Here.
Mr. Vinson.
Here.
Chairman Francis.
Here. Okay, thank you. What we'll have now is the quasi-judicial announcement and swearing in of speakers by our new city attorney, Mr. J. Daniel. I hope I got that right.
You did fine. I appreciate it. It's nice to meet all of you and to be here with you. I appreciate it. And we'll try to run through this. I know that Jim does this at the speed of light. I might be a little bit more slow.
Okay, take your time.
But, I didn't have 38 years to commit to memory as he did. But I have done it before. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where this board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not this board's function to make law, but rather to apply the law that has already been established. In such a hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the code in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If that competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the code, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the code, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. There is an established procedure which will be followed at this hearing. All witnesses must give the testimony under oath and give their name and addresses for the record. All testimony and questioning at this hearing must address matters that are relevant and material to the issues under consideration. The city staff will present its testimony and evidence first. The applicant will then have an opportunity to cross-examine the city staff. The applicant will then present its testimony and witnesses. The city staff will have an opportunity to cross-examine the applicant's witnesses. Members of the public opposing the application will then be given the opportunity to present testimony. After all members of the public speaking in opposition to the application have concluded, members of the public in support of the application will have the opportunity to present testimony. Each member of the public is limited to 4 minutes. Excuse me. The applicant will then have an opportunity to make a closing argument or summary, after which city staff will be given an opportunity to make a closing argument or summary. Following this procedure, the board will consider the matter and may ask questions of witnesses at this point. A motion will be made and a vote will be taken. With that, I would ask that any person who intends to give testimony this evening to please stand and be sworn. Let me ask you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right. Much appreciated. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have the first application is 13-52 Keystone Ridge Estates, and we will now hear from staff. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is application 13-52. It's a site plan application for a 35-lot single-family residential subdivision on Keystone Road. The property is a little less than 12 acres and is currently zoned R70A. Those of you probably remember this application several months ago when the City Commission rezoned the property from R100 to R70A. And this is a follow-up application in order to develop the property into the requested subdivision. You'll see that the TRC reviewed the project on August 8th, and you have a comprehensive list of the comments there in your staff report. You'll see that all TRC comments were addressed on the September 9th resubmittal. The project is a single-phase development. It will have one vehicular access point on Keystone Road. The applicant has identified sheet LA1 as their landscaping plan, And you'll see the applicant is required to plant a minimum of 4 trees per lot as each home is constructed, and that the banks of the retention pond will be planted at a 20% coverage rate. The applicant will also be constructing 4-foot sidewalks along both sides of the street within the subdivision. The applicant has also prepared a protected species survey, which you have in your backup, and the report identified one potentially active gopher tortoise burrow within the project area and an osprey that was observed feeding on the site. The applicant will relocate the gopher tortoise, consistent with the FFWCC regulations. Also, we have checked the site against eagle nest locations, and there are none within the project area. We have also determined that the application is consistent with the city's goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and those are listed in your staff report. We've performed the usual levels of service analysis and determined that we have no objections because the city can serve the property with all the required public services. We have not received any public correspondence on this item. It is staff's professional opinion that the application meets all review criteria, and our recommendation is to approve the site plan subject to the following conditions. 1, the developer is responsible for acquiring all other jurisdictional permits and for meeting the minimum criteria of the Land Development Code. 2, construction plans signed and sealed by a registered engineer licensed to practice in the state of Florida must be submitted within 1 year of the date of final site plan approval. And 3, the site plan shall expire within 1 year of the effective date unless an application has been filed for a building permit. You have a location map, an aerial photo of the site, a zoning map, a future land use map in your backup. You also have the protected species survey that I referenced earlier, as well as photographs showing the type and style of home to be constructed within the subdivision, and you also have a set of site plans. And with that, concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have related to the criteria in the code.
Thank you very much. Let's start with Mr. Carr. Do you have any questions for staff? Mr. Zalakis?
Thank you. Rodney, the land use and zoning on this, in the book for R78 says 6 units per acre. The RL, is that 5 units per acre?
5.
And seeing that it looks like just from the aerial photo there's some significant amount of floodplain and wetlands on the lower portion of the property. So is there a certain amount of acreage subtracted out as far as what's left buildable to determine the units per acre? Because I didn't see anything in the report as far as how many units per acre this development is actually coming out towards, as far as, you know.
If you look at sheet C5, you'll see the approximate location of the wetland and its relation to Lake Tarpon Avenue. You'll see that primarily the wetland is located on lots 9, 10, 11, and 12, and also 13. As far as the overall density, you can look at the cover sheet, which gives you the overall land area, 11.59 acres. The wetlands are 1.53 acres. So you do the math, and then you work out your density. They're well below the...
So basically 10 acres of usable, you're saying?
Yes.
So technically they could put 50 units on this property?
Yes.
Okay. From looking at just the diagrams and things you've given us in the backup, are there any platted roads or alleys in this property, or are there any platted connections to adjacent roadways?
No, it's a a couple large parcels of land with no existing platted rights-of-way. They'll be going through a subdivision plat as part of the next step in the development phase of the project, but as of right now, there are no rights-of-way.
But as far as city records, we don't show anything as far as any
No.
designated alleyways, roadways, right-of-ways, or things of that
No.
nature? Okay. I think that's it for staff right now. Thank you.
Mr. Vincent, do you have any questions for staff?
None for Rodney, thank you.
Mr. Jones?
No questions.
Okay, we'll hear from the agent. Is that Sean Casey? Please come forward and give us your name and address, please. That mic comes off of there if you wish to hold a mic.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Sean Cashman. My company is Gulf Coast Consulting. We're located at 13825 ICOP Boulevard, Suite 605, Clearwater, Florida. And I'm the engineer record for this project. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have regarding the plan or any of the information you have in front of you.
You have 10 minutes to give us the presentation if you wish.
Well, I think Rodney did a very good job giving you some of the general information. And as he mentioned, it's a proposed 35-lot subdivision that's located diagonally across from Mellon Street, right off the Keystone Road. Part of it abuts onto Lake Tarpon. And I can't really add any more to it than that. And I know if you have any specific questions on the site plan, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them for you.
Okay, let me start with our board members. Mr. Carr, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I see there's going to be a block retaining wall down both sides, the north side and the south side, looks like. How tall is that going to be? Is that going to be a pretty tall wall, or is that just for retaining of dirt? I'm talking about the north side and the south side of the property. It's referenced on a couple pages where it says 180-foot linear foot of anchor block wall, retaining wall. The north side and the south side has 280 feet of linear anchor block retaining wall.
There is going to be some retaining wall that's located on both the north side and the south side of the property, and that is to help transition some of the grading that we are encountered with for this plan. There's a lot of, it's kind of an unusual site for Florida. There's a lot of relief. The existing contours of the site are right now about almost in the middle of the site, about elevation 38, 39, and it slopes, part of it slopes to the west-northwest towards Keystone Road, where you have existing elevations there, like around 11, and then so you have a ridge right in the middle of the site, and then the east part of the property slopes down to Lake Tarpon, down to existing ground about 5 or 6, thereabouts. So there's there's a ridge running right through the middle of the site and a fairly severe slope that slopes both towards the roadway and Lake Tarpon. And the grading we were confronted with as part of this site design required some of the transition areas to the rear of the lots, both to the north and to the south, in order to make the drainage work with the grading and trying to transition down to match existing grade. It did require some retaining walls both to the north and to the south that you have shown there on the plan.
So it's going to prevent runoff to neighboring houses and so on?
It's there for drainage, so that instead of our drainage flowing off into adjacent properties, a retaining wall is there in order to allow us to slope properly from the proposed house pad down to the property boundary and also to, yes, collect the rear yard drainage from our property and to convey that to the ponds that are located at the four corners of the property. So it's for grading and for collecting the drainage, yes.
Mr. Zelakis.
I'll pass to my other members thank you.
Mr. Vincent.
One concern I have is the access on Keystone Road. I know there's no other access by right-of-way, but did the developer consider trying to obtain access through one of the areas on either side of the property? We all know the Keystone Road's a fairly heavily traveled road, and I don't see any deceleration lanes shown, and it's a gated community. So if the gate's closed, you've got a limited space there. I don't know how many car lengths that is between the road and the gate. Maybe you can tell me about that.
It's approximately 50 feet, which is what we typically try to provide from the edge of the drive lane on Keystone Road to what would be the first, I guess the call box or the median that we have there for the gates. And that's and actually, this roadway connection to Keystone will be permitted through Pinellas County. So we'll be submitting that in a matter of days, and once that is submitted to the county, they will review what we are proposing through their right-of-way use permit. Not only the driveway connection, but also the storm sewer connections that we have as well. So there are the two kiosks, if you will, that are up front. They're 50 feet from the drive lane, which does allow for one car sitting at the kiosk and two other cars behind it. What we envision there up front is that there is going to be a kiosk or a call box for a guest or a visitor, and then you'll have and it's probably going to be on the right side, and then you will have a call box. And maybe a card reader or something like that will be the inside kiosk, so that if you live in the development, then you just go through the middle drive lane, and it may be a card reader or maybe a decal on the car or something like that will open up the gate automatically. But you would just go right in, the gate would open, and you would go to your home. The visitor would be pulling up on the outside kiosk. Now, he would call the resident inside or punch in a code or something like that. But let's say, for instance, he's not getting any answer back. The way this is designed is that there's enough room for that car in the outside lane to turn around and exit through the exit drive, which is at the far north edge, if you will. So there's enough room for that car to turn around and then get back onto Keystone. So there will not be any backing up or any maneuvering onto Keystone Road. There'll be enough room for a passenger vehicle turnaround at the front gate.
Thank you. But did the owners consider any other access, or is that the only access, and you feel that's adequate?
I feel it's more than adequate for 35 lots, yes. And I know there was a private residence to the north, and then you have the townhomes that are to the south. And there wasn't really any practical means of access or a point of access besides Keystone Road out there on the west side.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the engineering challenges you had because of the severe slope? This is one of the properties in Tarpon. We do have some hills, and this is probably one of the, I think, steepest hills or ridges we have in Tarpon. Is along that stretch of land. And as far as the runoff and the drainage, the velocity of the runoff, and what's the effect of that when it gets down towards the bottom of the hill?
Well, as I had mentioned previously, there's a lot of relief that we had from the ridge in the middle down towards Keystone and down towards the lake. And part of our challenge that we were confronted with is to make that grade a little bit more manageable, and you need to transition from lot to lot as you're going across that slope, and also provide not only drainage to the roadway, but what's very important is providing the grading transitions and the drainage along the perimeter of the properties to ensure that you're not going to have any impact or adversely impact the adjacent properties that are to the north and to the south. So it's not your typical Florida tract where it's very, very flat. You may drain off into a wetland and you're digging a pond and filling up your development, and you have minimal slopes. This was quite a bit different. And that was part of it as well, so that you some of your swales that we have to the rear, that we had a manageable slope on those swales, and that we didn't have a swale that was sloped at 10%. That was carrying a high volume of water, because in a condition like that, you're prone to scour and erosion and channelization of the water, which can cause a lot of different problems. So that was, in a nutshell, that was some of the challenges we were faced with the grading of the site. It was very, very challenging.
And do you think you met that challenge as far as dealing with the runoff, especially the stormwater runoff and the scouring and the erosion effects as the water goes down to the hill, bottom of the hill?
Do I feel I think we've properly addressed that, yes, with this design. Yes, sir.
I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Gillis?
No questions.
I was going to ask you if someone's coming out of the subdivision and it's going to make a left, and let's say they're going to head, if you're making a left, you're heading in the westward direction towards 19, GS 19?
Yes.
Okay. How do they make a left turn?
Well, they won't be making a left from the project entrance. They'll have to make a right turn and then head up Keystone Road and
Highland Avenue.
Is it Highland Avenue?
I'm sorry. Median opening at Highland Avenue.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Mr. Franzese, as Mr. Cashin said, they would have to exit the property, head eastbound on the Keystone. There's a median there now.
Okay.
And so the nearest median opening would be at North Highland Avenue.
Okay, so then you just turn around there.
Make a U-turn and go back westbound.
Okay. All right. Mr. Delakis?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franzese. Since we're talking about traffic, let's follow up on that. So, just to clarify, across or in front of the proposed driveway on Keystone Road, there is a current median, so you cannot actually cross Keystone Road at that point?
That is correct, yes.
All right, so how will people coming westbound on Keystone enter the project if there's a median there? Will they have to go further west and make a U-turn and come back?
They would, yes.
So it sounds like you're creating traffic issues on Keystone Road where people entering and exiting this development will have to go somewhere east or west to make U-turns to go the opposite direction. It sounds like, what's that place out on 19? Riverwatch, is it?
Yeah. Yes,
Riverwatch Park out there where they got those same issues?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that correct, Mr. Chapman? Riverwalk
I would
has
say
that sort of same issue?
I would say the traffic characteristics of US 19 are completely different than Keystone
Maybe a little more
Road.
volume, but I'm talking about having the exit and entrance by U-turns.
I would further say that the way people traveling westbound would access the site, there's another median open at the intersection of Mellon Street and Keystone Road, which is just a few hundred feet away from the site.
But the whole synopsis of what I'm getting at is there'll be a number of people entering or exiting to go the correct or the direction they desire will require U-turns on Keystone Road.
That's
correct?
the way it is now. Yes.
Thank you. Now, so that's why I kind of asked about the right-of-ways and plats. So there's no way there can be a connector connected to Hillside Landings Drive on the south or Sailfish Drive on the north?
No.
Say
No.
again?
Those are private subdivisions. Those are not public
Those
platted
aren't public
roadways.
access.
Right.
Okay. So they're pretty much locked in. Okay. 'Cause to me, I don't know, I have to question this one here on page, go back to it. On page 5, under the transportation element, policy 133, city shall discourage the use of cul-de-sacs for new residential subdivision. This is just a cul-de-sac on a big scale.
I would disagree.
You got a little hole and a big circle. And with these people, not only got the houses on the outside of the circle, they're going to stuff houses on the inside of the circle. Now, I want to go back to this retaining wall. If you would, I think C6 is a better picture for us to look at. And I'd like to get some answers here. It says up at the top, anchor modular retaining wall or approved equal with 42-inch high handrail. Shows those both up on the top in the sections. It shows it down here in the middle where it's arrows. Shows it down at the bottom. Is that the same retaining wall that my co-councilman was asking you about, or is that a totally different retaining wall?
That is the same retaining wall, I believe.
Okay. My understanding from retaining walls, usually, you put the wall there to keep all this other stuff from flowing down the slope.
That is correct.
And I look on this diagram, and I'm seeing water flows. Now, let's just look at lots 1 through 7. When you look in the middle of each of those lots, I see water flows forward to the road and back to that back end of the property towards those retaining walls. And then all those properties there do that. And on the south side, they seem to do the same thing. So, will there be a swale or something along this retaining wall between the wall and those houses that are constructed?
Yes, there will. And if you note on sheet C6, there is, between the house pad and the retaining wall, there is a flow arrow.
Yeah.
Which denotes the location of the rear yard swale. And those are also shown in cross sections. We try to give as much detail as possible. So there are cross sections F and G that are along the south.
Okay.
But
I guess what I'm trying to follow up along with Mr. Vinson's questioning, it looks like between property 4 and 5, there's a split where water flow goes to the west to pond 1, and then from 5 on goes to pond 4, and likewise down here below, let's see, which units are they? No, between 18 and 17, the water flow splits again, where
correct.
From 17 eastbound it goes to 5, and 18 westbound goes to 2.
That's correct.
So,
And that's
I'm curious, I'm seeing all these flows to these side ponds, and then I'm seeing pond 3 here, with all these inlets running to pond 3. Is pond 3 your major filtering pond? Does all the excess flow to there?
actually the way the development is designed, it's almost as if we have a quadrant drainage basin area that goes to 4, a quadrant of the site that goes to 1, and the same with 2 and 5, which are on the south boundary. And then you have at the low end of the site, because as we are approaching Lake Tarpon to the east, that is the low end of the site, because Lake Tarpon is by far the low end of the site. So pond 3 is situated there to collect some of the drainage on that low end of the site. And some of these high points that you had described at 4, I think it's about around lots 4 and 5, and then 17 and 18. Those are high points in those swales that more or less follow the existing ridge of the property right now. So we're working with the topography that is on the site, and that's approximately where the high point is now on the site, and so that's why we have that's where we put the high point in the swale to direct the rear yard runoff both to the west to ponds 1 and 2, and to the east to ponds 4 and 5.
And on the east side of this map, I'm seeing the FEMA flood line, and there are like some gray dotted lines, Zone X, 500 year. And it looks like part of those lines cut through your ponds. So how does that work as far as augmenting or creating your ponds in a flood area? And it looks like that's also in wetland area itself from you look at the topography map.
Pond number 5 is actually located landward of the wetland line, so it is primarily 25 feet away from the wetland line, and that 25 feet is the wetland buffer. The one line there that you referred to, the one FEMA flood line, that is the delineation line from flood zone AE, which is at elevation 6, and that's the 100-year flood elevation, which is determined to be at elevation 6 for Lake Tarpon. And the other line that you have there is the zone X, which is the 500-year flood line. We do have a small little portion of Pond 5 that it encroaches ever so slightly into that 100-year flood elevation. And we did get some SwiftMud comments back. I don't recall there being a comment regarding that sliver of berm that's within the 100-year. Yes.
Can you step over here a minute and show us on this?
Sure.
We want to see where the 100-year line is.
Up here it says AE and then zone. So are you saying this is the 100-year line?
Yes, sir.
And what's this?
And that is the 500-year.
All right, just for reference purposes, if you look on C6, the gray line that's more north and south is what he's referring to as the 100-year line, and the wavy gray line is the 500. So you're referring to this is the only part of the parcel that is in the 100-year flood zone.
Correct.
But your predominance of the pond here is still within that 500-year zone, isn't it?
It's between yes, it's in that 500 year.
And is this not all wetlands in this area?
Actually, the wetland line is this line right here. That is the wetland line.
And then where does it extend on the western side? Let's see it here.
Yes. In this line, which is offset from it, that is the upland buffer, which is 25 feet from this wetland line, which is right here.
Okay.
And it should have been labeled on this plan sheet, but for some reason, is it on sheet C7? I don't think it's labeled. We see it better that way as well.
Is this our wetland right here?
Yes, that is what.
Okay.
So the boundary of the wetland is this?
Yes. Well, this is the wetland or upland buffer, which is offset from the wetland. But
So that's 25 feet?
actually, that is 15 feet, which is SwiftMud has a 15-foot minimum, 25-foot average. So where we're getting a little pinch down here, that is 15 feet here, 25 feet here, and then you have a little upland buffer sliver right here, which is just going to remain undeveloped right there.
Where does the lake start here?
The lake, that may be shown on an overall plan. Graphically, the water's edge is about right here, here. And that actually defines the eastern boundary of the water's edge, which is right in through here.
Yeah. probably gonna need to finish speaking up there then. And just for clarification, the gentleman was saying on C7, the more predominant dashed lines on the east side is the wetland boundary, and then there's a line with like little or square boxes on it, which is the buffer, and the gentleman may want to further clarify that.
And on sheet C5, a lot of the labels for the wetland line and wetland buffer, they are detailed on sheet C5. So you can see those a little bit more clearly. I agree, they should also be shown on sheet C6 as well, just to clarify that.
Rodney? Or Mr. Chapman? The gentleman, and he may want to reiterate, says that Swiftmud has a 15-foot buffer boundary with a 25-foot average, something of that nature. Could you elaborate on the record what that's in regard to? How much is required by them?
Well, that's a Swiftmud requirement.
All right.
We have its own 15-foot jurisdictional wetland buffer that is being maintained on the site plan.
Okay. Do we not have, I believe, additional requirements for wetland buffers? Because I remember, we had that property on alternate 19 by Dixie Highway on the left that was 10-something acres, and then they cut off a sliver to get under 10.
His company was the civil engineer on that project.
Okay. So, if I remember correctly, there were requirements of a certain amount of buffers, 50 feet.
Because that was a planned development. The city's land development code has additional standards for wetlands and other things when it comes to properties that are in a planned development zoning district versus a straight conventional residential district.
Okay, so if this was a planned development,
then they need to have a 50-foot.
They would have additional buffer requirements.
Yes.
What's the difference between this and a planned development? I mean, they've got walls, they've got a subdivision plat, they're going to have gated access. That sounds like a planned development to me.
That is not a planned development.
Can you elaborate as to how this does not qualify as a planned
because
development?
it's not zoned for planned development. If they wanted it to be a planned development, then that property would reflect that. As you can see on the zoning map, it is R70A zoning on the property.
Right. So even though it's not zone planned development, what they're planning is a planned development just going into a different zoning.
No, I would disagree. It's not a planned development.
They're not planning to put a development here.
Using that logic, every site plan that comes to you guys is a planned development.
It's not like one house
versus
it's
a
not
residential
one house,
or
it's not
commercial.
Two houses, it's not three houses. They're going to require a plat, which to me is a planned development. Thank you. You don't have to argue with me now. I'm just trying to make a point here. Now. Let's talk some more about this anchor wall, C9. Is this it?
That is, yes, that's one of the standard details.
Say again?
That is one of their standard details.
All right, but is that the anchor wall that we've been referring to on the north side of the 180 feet and 280 feet of the retaining wall with the 42-foot high handrail?
Yes.
Okay. So if I look at this as geosynthetic reinforcement, is that like spars going into the side? Can you tell me what's the construction of this as far as the stability? Because it looks on the one side it's totally empty with just a little riprap on the bottom.
Correct. And what, if you look at that cross section, what that wall is retaining is the earth behind it.
Okay.
And the geosynthetic reinforcement that these walls come with is a plastic geogrid, high-density polyethylene plastic geogrid fabric, if you will, that's locked into the wall and extends back approximately 5 to 6 feet from the wall. And as
into the earth?
Into the earth. into the earth that is being
Is that
retained.
almost like when they do the seawalls and they put a big rod and then they put a big ballast on the other end?
Yes, it's very similar to a dead man or a rebar reinforcement.
So what's the ballast on the other end of this?
It's the dirt, believe it or not. And the dirt is what you compact the dirt with the geogrid behind the wall, and that's what anchors that wall in place and keeps it from moving.
Okay. So if I look at this picture on C9 and the vacant side, that's the wall, I'm assuming that's going to be the side facing the adjacent properties.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and it shows here on the other one, it says hand-cut block unit, so that's going to be just basically a concrete wall. And what, they pour concrete inside, they put these geosynthetic reinforcements and rebars to hold back all that stuff you're cutting back away.
The block, it's a modular block that I didn't bring any specs with me. Although I did send some information to Richard Haig. But it's a blocks on top of blocks, but there's little keyholes that and the blocks are offset, I think, a quarter inch every block. So it's got a little bit of a tilt to it as you go up. And these blocks kind of fit into each other with a little, I'm not describing this very well, but like a little keyhole that fits into the block underneath it. So they're anchored in place. And then every 2 feet or so, you will have that geogrid reinforcement that will extend back 5 feet. And each wall will be designed by a structural engineer, and we will get those structural engineer calculations and shop drawings for each wall that we have proposed on the plan.
C4. And we'll compare that with LA1. Okay, on the tree legend, you've got a whole bunch of species listed and trees to be removed. See a lot of X's in here. Normally when we see these, and I'm not sure if Mr. Chapman advised you or something, but I don't see the total number of trees being removed. I don't see the total number of inches. I do see on LA1, it says 26 trees are going to be put in with the retention pond tree requirements, and then I look at those few little trees around the edges, and I'm looking at the other thing. It says to put 140 trees in, and when I look at what you talk about the difficulties of the topography, I'm kind of curious as to why it wasn't used more, and in fact, I'm curious to note do you have any idea how many trees are being removed?
The total number?
Yeah. All these little
Mr. Delacus, if you look at sheet LA2, which is the next sheet, there is a free table that shows the total number of inches of trees that will be removed.
All right. Thank you, Rodney. I didn't see that. I appreciate that. So How many trees, though? Doesn't say.
Because, as you know, our mitigation requirements are inch for inch. So that's why we didn't include a breakdown of the actual number of trees on the property, because it's of lesser importance when you're dealing with replanting and mitigation. It's more important to identify the total number of trees, but because your mitigation is required to be inch for inch replacement or mitigation.
Okay, so according to this, these numbers here on LA2, where it talks about non-palm species, total inches removed, 12,711, then some replacement inches, and it says approximate net inches, 12,462. And then it says total inches replaced, 249. So basically, you subtract that off, you're still talking about over 12,000 inches of trees. Is that correct? Sounds like correct to me. Oh, I see a nod from Mr. Chapman. So, what's your tree replacement plan beyond just 26 trees that are listed on LA1, which, if you count the actual circles there, is 25. So what's the tree replacement plan?
Well, I think I kind of referenced that in the staff report. The 26 trees you see on LA1 are the trees that are required for the retention pond. Further, the code requires a minimum of 4 trees per lot. They have the ability to plant more trees, and they also have the ability to plant larger trees. As the tree ordinance has been in effect for a number of years, what we found is applicants, when it comes to trees, they're going to overplant the site. They're going to plant larger trees so that their total number that is applied to their mitigation goes down. And we talked to the applicant about taking that same approach, because the code only requires 1.5-inch trees, so they may go up to a 3 or 4-inch tree so that they're paying less into the tree.
Well, they're going to put in a 3 or 4 and take out a 16 and a 19 and 20s and.
As long as they're paying the proper mitigation, it meets the code.
We understand. I'm going to use C6 for reference because it shows me a whole bunch more. But basically, at this point, I'd like to inquire about the development itself. The houses that are going to be built in this area, what's the approximate square footage that you're planning for the project houses?
You can have someone else come.
They can come up and
answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just say there would be about 25.
Why don't you come on up and give us your name and address, please, and answer the question? Good evening. My name is Frank Burkett.
Say again?
Frank Burkett.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Burkett, were you sworn when we took? I didn't.
No.
Okay. Well, let me ask you to raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Frank Burkett, 1744 Santa Barbara Drive, Dunedin, Florida. The question was
Yeah, you heard.
Yes, I'm gonna. The question that was posed was how big the houses are going to be. We're estimating from 2,800 to over 4,000 square feet, the ones on the water.
2,800 to 4,000 square feet. Will each of these houses have their own pool?
Most likely, yes.
A lot of impervious surface, huh? Big houses, pools, driveways, roads.
That's the market trend today, is people want more homes on the lot.
I'm not sure who can answer this, but when this project is fully developed, what's the percentage of impervious surface? Don't say anything, Rodney. I'm asking them, please. Thank you.
I'll venture to guess it's probably going to be 70%.
Say again?
65 to 70. The total impervious?
Yeah, impervious. No water drainage compared to what we have now, 100%.
I would say 65%.
65% impervious. Okay. We were given examples of these. Were you given these, or you provided these to us?
We provided, those are the photographs. We
Okay.
provided those to you.
So I'm looking at just for the other board members, I'm starting with the photographs of the what I will call mini mega mansions. The one with the orange lights. I don't see any oak trees. I don't see anything but impervious surface except for a few little landscaping.
That was for just illustration purposes. That's a property that
When we go on our voting, we go based on what the elevations are provided to us, what diagrams are provided as what will be built there. And Mr. Chapman can verify on previous projects we've been giving objects of what will be potentially there, and we're taking that, and we'll go through them all. I don't care. Okay. Well, we'll just go with what's here. And the second one was like the blue turquoise. A lot of driveway. What was that? A rock with a whole bunch of fronts. I don't see any shade trees. This isn't a Florida design. You know, where's the shade?
Mr. Delacus, as I explained before, they're required to do a minimum of 4
I know.
trees per lot.
I understand what they're required. I'm asking them about what their project
because
elevations.
those elevations were given to give you an idea of the style of home.
I'm quite aware, and I still will. So I'm assuming that's the back side of the previous picture?
I can't see it from here.
Well, y'all provided them. Maybe y'all should have copies up there, but it looks like the back side of the previous one, because it's the blue one. So again, it looks like you're going to take out a whole bunch of trees. I don't hear anything too much about a tree replanting except for the 4 at each lot. And concerned about your drainage. You don't have enough buffer. That's enough questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that has questions for the applicant?
Can I ask one more question? I just have a question about the drainage off where the retention walls are. I know the flow is going towards the lake. How does one prevent the water from draining around the retaining wall through the rest of the property instead of like it's supposed to? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask. How do you prevent it from just going around the retaining wall into the neighboring properties through that area? If there's going to be like a swell of some sort, is it going to have to go up? I mean, because I know the water usually doesn't go up and then come back down. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does. You're going to have your wall here. Here's the adjacent property over here.
Right.
Here's our wall. And on some of the cross sections, we come down. We'll come over about a foot, and then we put in about a foot deep swale that's going to be adjacent to that wall, and that swale is going to collect the rear yard runoff and then convey that to the ponds on either the west or the east side.
But the additional land that's going to be missing on the right-hand side is not going to want to scoot that direction.
You mean on the walls here, the adjacent property?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the wall itself is going to be placed about 3-4 feet away from the adjacent property, and so that gap right there is that water is going to go where it goes now, which it splits along the ridge line and it goes east and west.
Okay. All right, thanks for the information.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, have a seat, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against this application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak for it? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting and entertain a motion. Do we have a motion?
I'm going to move a motion to approve the application, 13.5 or -52 Keystone Ridge Estates.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, we're open for board discussion. Mr. Giulius, do you have anything?
No, not really.
Mr. Vincent?
No, I think I've said everything I need to say.
Okay, Mr. Clark?
No.
Mr. Zalakis? No, we're good. Okay, I'm going to call the question.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Giulius?
Yes.
Mr. Zalakis?
No.
Mr. Vincent?
No?
And Chairman Francis?
Yes. Okay. 3-2? Okay. Good luck. Thank you for your patience. Our next application is 13-57, a place for pups, and we'll have the staff report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a conditional use request for the overnight boarding of dogs at 39930 U.S. Highway 19 North. Property is located in the Highway Business Zoning District. And for those of you that have been around for a while, you'll probably remember back in 2008 where the city approved Resolution 2008-41, which permitted a dog daycare and training establishment at this location. The Commission placed several conditions on the approval to reduce the impact of the business on the adjacent Stonehenge Mobile Home Park, which is directly south of the property. The business has operated under those approval conditions since that time, and the owner now desires to apply to add overnight boarding of up to 12 dogs to the services that she offers to her clients. Since this is a conditional use, you see the standards for review on starting on page 2, and I'll highlight just a couple of the criteria. The applicant will only be boarding domestic pets, specifically dogs. The code requires a minimum 100-foot setback from any residentially zoned or utilized property. And as you can see from our analysis, the current setback from the building where the daycare and overnight boarding would take place is only 28.8 feet from the Stonehenge Mobile Home Park. And it's our estimation that it does not meet the code requirement. The applicant has demonstrated that they will have an exercise area located inside the building. The only time they do go outside is when they go to the bathroom, and you'll see it under the previous conditional use approval that restricted outside activities from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The applicant was previously required to add additional soundproofing to the interior of the building, and they provide photographs to demonstrate that. They will have a veterinarian on call. They've stated that they have 150 square feet per animal. And if the application is approved, they will use an ADT monitoring system during the overnight hours. You'll see that TRC reviewed the application at the August 22nd meeting, and you have a summary of the comments from the committee. We have properly noticed the application to the surrounding public and had not received any correspondence to date. It is our professional opinion that the application has not met all the review criteria, and the staff recommendation is to deny the conditional use for the overnight boarding of dogs at 39930 U.S. Highway 19 North. I've provided you some photographs of the exterior of the building. The first photograph is the east side of the building, showing the business entrance. The second photograph off to the left is the southwest corner of the business, and then off to the right hand side is that white fence is where the Stonehenge Mobile Home Park begins. The third photograph is again a photograph of you can see the rooftops of the mobile homes over the white vinyl fence. And then the fourth photograph is the kennel area of the building. Provide you with the normal area map, zoning map, future land use map. I've also given you a floor plan that shows the layout of the building, and the 12 kennels are highlighted in yellow. I've also given you a site layout plan that shows the approximate location of the business outlined in red, with the proposed overnight kennel area in yellow, and there's a couple of dimensions that I circled for you in yellow, with the 28.8 feet from the southwest corner of the building to the boundary of the Stonehenge Mobile Home Park, as well as another measurement from the corner of the area where the kennels will be to the boundary of the mobile home park, and that distance is 89 feet. The applicant provided photographs of the interior, soundproofing on the following page, as well as a picture of the outdoor area, and then 3 photographs of the kennels. We also have a summary from the applicant that outlines the use and its relationship to the criteria. We also have a copy of an email the applicant sent to the management at the Stonehenge Mobile Home Park. And you have a copy of Resolution 2008-41, which established or approved the conditional use to allow for the dog daycare and training at this location. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Questions for staff? Mr. Carr.
Mr. Chapman, why do you think there's a difference between the 100-foot setback for an overnight stay versus during the day daycare in the code? Or why would this be approved for the daycare then, not with the setback having issues for the overnight?
The rationale behind that buffer was developed based on some of our experience. Prior to the 2008 application, we didn't have the ability, there was nothing in the code that said you could board dogs other than at a veterinary clinic. At the time, we had another application in that was for property on the east side of US 19, which is across the street from a residential area. And doing our research, we found that there was a propensity for nuisance issues for dogs being boarded overnight. Normally, I'll say in most other municipality codes, they don't allow boarding in an urbanized area, for example. Normally, those types of boarding establishments, if they're not associated with a vet clinic, are put out on the outskirts of town, essentially, in industrial areas and more agricultural areas. So you wouldn't really bother anybody if you had noisy animals at night. But since we were allowing this as a conditional use in our urbanized area or highway business district, it was deemed appropriate to protect all property owners' quality of life by having that 100-foot buffer in, because without that, you could technically have a kennel next to someone's home, and that would be a nuisance, or could be if it's not ran properly.
Does the veterinary office have different setbacks based on the veterinarian status?
No, Westlake has a kennel, for example, but their kennels are few, and normally they're only used when there's a sick animal or an animal that needs a procedure and has to stay at the kennel overnight for observation. And that's in our opinion, that's the biggest distinction between a vet with a kennel versus this type of establishment with a kennel.
Is there another veterinarian office on 19? Is it Anclote?
Yes.
Do they have boarding there?
Not that I know of. I could be wrong.
Thanks. That's all I have for now.
Mr. Zalakis?
So, in 2008, they were permitted a dog daycare and training establishment, allowed to have animals inside during the day, and they abided by the resolution to create the fencing and all that stuff. They've been good neighbors in that regard.
Yes.
And your research, did you check with code enforcement to see if there had been any complaints or any filings against them?
There have not been any complaints.
Okay. So, in essence, and kind of following up on Mr. Carr's thing, they don't have, the boundary issue is during the day is not a factor. They've not been a factor of not abiding by their resolution. So basically it's a thing in the code saying 89 or 100 feet from a residential property, although everything will be being done inside.
Yes.
That's good for staff. Thank you.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, that's good for staff. Thank you.
Mr. Vincent?
No questions of staff. Thank you.
Mr. Ulysses?
No questions.
Okay. So we can hear from the applicant at this time. Mrs. Weeks, please come up to the lectern and give us your address, name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Weeks.
You can turn it down, or you can even take it off if you wish, ma'am.
It's Kathleen Weeks. I'm the owner of a place for pups at 39930 U.S. Highway 19 North in Tarpon Springs. I have owned a place for pups, the doggy daycare, since July 2010. During that time, we have cared for large and small dogs in the community. I employ 6 people plus myself, and most of my employees have attended Tarpon Springs High School Veterinary Science Academy. Several are going to college to further their education in veterinary science. We have a good reputation, and many new clients walk in and tell me that we come highly recommended. However, the current economic climate being what it is, we struggle to make ends meet. From my understanding, that was not the case 5 or 10 years ago, but now we must use every resource available to improve the bottom line and remain a viable business here in Tarpon Springs. With that in mind, we are seeking to make use of an area of our building that is underused. There are 12 secure kennels in the very back of our building, and it would be the perfect spot for overnight boarding. We have to turn a good amount of business away from potential clients who only need occasional boarding of their pets, and we propose to use these indoor kennels at night and only use the outdoor yard area for potty breaks during the hours that we are currently permitted to use it. Dogs will be fed and housed indoors under air conditioning. We want to be good neighbors, and we ask that we be permitted to offer this service in Tarpon Springs.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Corey, you have any questions for the applicant?
I was just looking at the roof line where the kennel is going to be from the building. Is the kennel separate from the building itself? Is that a separate building?
No, it's not.
From above view, it looks like it's 2 different buildings, but it's not.
It's kind of a different roof line, but it's it's a, part of the building. We can, walk right in there from the other areas of the building.
They're the same walls have been soundproof
Yes,
throughout.
yes.
What happens when the dogs need to, I guess, go outside, need to do their business, I suppose? Are they inside or is that outside situation, or is that done during the day?
We take them out every couple of hours during the day.
Okay. What about at night? What would happen with that situation? Is that outside or is that an inside thing? I mean, is there going to be an issue with that?
Most of the time they do not need to go out during the evening. If they do, we've got drains in the floor. We pick up waste.
So you don't actually take them outside then? You just it's all this stuff
during the night?
Yeah.
No, we would not take them outside during the
night. That's all inside stuff then. I believe that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zalakis.
Yeah, and the where it talks about having the ADT, where is that, service, an overnight monitoring, and then in your letter you said something about someone lives maybe about 10 minutes away.
Right.
So what's ADT going to be monitoring? What are they going to be looking for? Dogs?
Well,
fighting? I mean, what
there would be a motion sensor in the front part, and they would be monitoring for intrusion.
Okay, but there's no one actually in the evening coming in and checking on the animals and actually monitoring to see if they're okay, everything's hunky-dory. You don't have somebody scheduled to come in like every 3 or 4 hours to check on them?
No, and most boarding facilities do not do that.
Okay. And the place, I guess the pictures you show that we have here in the back show like cages, and then I see the concrete floor. So again, following up, because I don't know, I have 2 dogs and I got to take them and walk them at the middle of the night. I mean, my wife takes them to the park around 6:30, gives them a good walk. They still eat, and so I don't know. So there's no one monitoring. They make messes in the floor. Someone comes in and cleans them. What's the protocol that you would?
If they have a solid mess, we pick it up. If they have liquid, we have drains in the floor. We also have an indoor pressure washing system that we can utilize to sanitize and wash the kennel if as often as needed.
And in our staff report on page 3, item 6 says odor and pest control shall be required. Outdoor runs there's no outdoor runs in this, but it says analysis. Applicant has not demonstrated any odor or pest control mechanism. Is that still the case?
We don't have any odor because we pick up all waste as soon as possible.
Yeah, but if no one's there overnight, you got 12 dogs in there, and next morning
we will pick up and sanitize and pressure wash as needed.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Fruntes.
Mr. Vinson?
As far as the monitoring overnight, would you be able to, say, provide, if the board requires that as a condition, to notify the, say, the police department of the contact person, so that if there's complaints from neighbors during the nighttime, that there would be someone they could reach to come and check on the dogs and the facilities?
Absolutely.
No further questions.
Mr. Chilicious?
What is an electronic bark control system?
It's a small device, and when the dogs bark, it returns an electronic sound that is unpleasant to them, and they learn to not bark because it
High
discourages
frequency.
them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So is that something that is not audible to humans, but only to the dogs?
Right.
I had one more question.
Okay, Mr. Deluxe has a question.
I see you, and Mr. Chapman referred to it, you sent an email to the Stonehenge group.
Correct.
Did you get any responses from them?
Their response, the only response that I got from them was that the for the lack of a better word, weeds and vines were growing up against their wall and over the top of the wall and onto their bushes. But that area is not my responsibility. So I sent that complaint to the landlord, and they have sent somebody over there to trim and mow that area.
But otherwise, they didn't respond to the
Right.
conditional use.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a question?
I have a question, I guess, for the attorney or Mr. Chapman. I mean, would this go to like the Board of Adjustment if they really had to, since it's like within the guide, like to try to get a different reading for square footage, or how does that work?
No, the way the code is set up, things that are in Article 2, which is your zoning dimensional regulations, front, side, rear, setbacks, building heights, things like that, or whether it's specifically authorized in that article are eligible for variances, or things that are especially authorized within other articles of the code as referenced in that section, like sidewalks, where it's authorized for a variance. When this was created, it was not authorized to be varied by the Board of Adjustment.
Secondly, then, we're supposed to interpret the way that it's written in the code.
Yes.
And the code falls into place, and it says it needs 100 square feet, or 100 feet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
11 feet.
So just for clarification, there's no way they can apply to the Board of Adjustments for a variance.
That's correct.
Okay.
Would there be an issue if they change locations inside the building? If they put another spot, would there be a 100 feet, or is it to the whole? Where you going? Because I see you have the 89 feet where the kennels are. It kind of read from where the building stops to where the residential plot starts. And if we go by, I guess, the property itself, the property is a butt to themselves, but how far is the closest home to them, or does the code read from property to property?
From the edge of the building to any residentially zoned or used property, so it's to the property line.
Okay. Any other questions for? I just wanted to ask the attorney. So this does not fit within the criteria that have been set forth. Is that correct?
That's correct. It does not meet Section 209.01 of your code, which requires conformance with the other requirements of this code, which is that 100-foot setback.
Okay.
So
we're kind of stuck on that. Is that what?
Well, y'all are advisory boards of the commission. You're not stuck on it. Certainly, you could approve the application. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you need to consider the competent evidence of whether the criteria has been met. Okay.
I do have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear? I mean, that's a loud. I've dropped friends' dogs off there before. And there seems to be a lot of dogs running around. Can you hear the dogs outside of the building at all? Is that an issue? I mean, have you had any sound tests or anything done, or been outside the building in the back? Is there?
I've been outside in the far corner of the yard, and you can barely hear some of the dogs barking if they're all like going at it because somebody walked in the front door. But I have never experienced really hearing the dogs.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Vincent?
Actually, it's a question for staff. Could you read that section of the ordinance? I didn't have a chance to look it up. 72.00B2 regarding the setback. Rodney, I see a little bit, or one sentence seems to be quoted. I don't know if that's the whole section there that we're talking about.
It's Mr. Vincent, it's basically criteria, 72.00 subsection B. The following standards of the reviews shall be required where overnight boarding is allowed as a conditional or permitted use. And number 2 is the minimum setback from any residentially zoned or utilized property for buildings shall be 100 feet. Then it goes on, the minimum setback for any residentially zoned or utilized property for outdoor runs shall be 500 feet, and then so on and so forth. Just kind of enumerates the criteria in section B.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicants? Okay, please have a seat, ma'am. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against this application? Have you been sworn in? Okay, please stand and raise your right hand, and our attorney will swear you in.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, please come forward and let us have your name and address, please. Are both of you going to speak? Okay.
My name is Dolores Thompson. I live at 39820 US 19 North, number 188, Stonehenge Mobile Home Park, Tarpon. I understand by what's being said here, if I am correct, that there will be no adult in that building at night with the dogs. And the young lady said that there would be help if something would go wrong. Who is to call for this help if there's no adult in the building? I don't know if any of you have ever ridden in the back of this building where there's supposed to be a dog run for these dogs. It looks like the Tarpon Springs dump. They leave their bin open in the back, and the crows are coming and taking the bag out, and they're flying over where we live and making their deposits. Sometimes there's 50 and 60 birds at one time. She said they planted trees to block the sound. They planted 7 bamboo trees that 6 days later died, and they sat that way for since 2008. They just now cleaned it up in the back. The man was just there the other day with a weed eater. He left most of the weeds. He went along the fence and didn't take all the junk down. And also during the day, when the dogs are let outside, we have lived with this for years. Sometimes there's 6 and 7 dogs out there together and they fight. This is not quiet. These are not, as she says, a place for pups. All these dogs are not puppies. They're bigger dogs and they bark loud, and it is very annoying. We've owned our property since 1978, and we were hoping it would kind of quiet down a little bit in our later years. I don't know what else to say about what she wants to do. I'm sorry she needs the money, but don't we all? But I'm very sorry about that. I just think that It should be looked at for everybody and not just the business. Thank you.
I'm the husband, so it's the same address and everything
Please
else.
give us your name, sir.
Pardon?
We need your name and address.
John Thompson, 39820 US 19 North. We live in Stonehenge Mobile Park.
Okay, speak into the mic.
Okay. And number one, that place is called Place for Pups. Well, if you live with us, you know there's more there than puppies, because these puppies don't have a growl and a bark like these dogs. And like the wife has mentioned, when the dogs do number two, they just pick it up. I don't know when, but they do pick it up eventually, throw it in a plastic bag, and then throw it in a dumpster. And now we've seen birds, like the wife mentioned. In fact, the one thing that I can't understand, we've had this rigmarole 2 or 3 years ago. And at that time, one of the board members, whatever they were, they said, okay, we want to raise the dogs from 35 to 50, but you've got to put up a buffer all the way around the whole area. Well, 2 weeks later, they start doing it, and they made maybe 12 foot, 8 foot high. And all of a sudden it stopped, and nobody came back no more, and that's also, every time we move, every time we go out the door, the dogs start barking if they're out. But he's driving us nuts. I know we're half there already, but why rush it? But like we told the commissioners last time, okay, if you pass it, when the dogs start barking at 4 a.m., we'll find out your phone numbers, and we'll give you a call, come down, and choose out the puppies. So, but we've been through this 3 times already, so just vote against it, because we're the ones that suffer. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, I have a question for you, please. I have a question. Can you stay up there? Have either of you or your wife, called the police department when there's been too much noise from there? Do you know
Yes,
how many?
we have. And then I got accused of blowing the whistle, because not these people, but the owners, previous owners called him and said he goes in the house, he comes out, and he blows a whistle and antagonizes the dogs. And I said, I whistle, but I don't have I don't go in the house. He said, well, how do you whistle? Just like that. Oh, well, they reported that you're blowing a whistle at the dogs. I do, but it's because them damn things bark, and, when it's 10 hours a day, it's barking and barking. So, it's crazy.
How many times have you called the police about the nuisance? Or called someone at the city?
Have we called?
Yes.
Never.
Oh.
Them's the people that call the dogs, the owners, because I whistle at them. But I whistle to shut them up. Because you can't open the door when say the weather's nice, you got the windows open. If you slam the door, they're barking if they're out. So after this, you kind of get goofy.
Is your home the closest one to this border here between the two businesses, or between Stonehenge?
What?
Is your home the closest one to the?
No, the second closest. That old gentleman, he can't hardly move, so I told him to come to the meeting, but he says I can't hardly move, so you'll have to do the talking for us. So.
What's the name of the street that's by your mobile home?
What's
the name of the street where you're located? Thank you. You're on Arcadia Drive? Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions for you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for this application? Please come forward and let us have your name, address, please.
Hi, my name is Pamela Pendleton, 1273 Lagoon Road, Tarpon Springs, Florida.
You can pick up the mic a little bit, please. There you go. Yeah,
Okay.
take it off.
Pamela Pendleton, 1273 Lagoon Road, Tarpon Springs. I have an Australian Shepherd, and I have been a client of a Place for Pups for approximately 7 years, somewhere around there. I can't tell you enough about how well run it is. And I would not bring my dog there if I didn't think it was well run. If you let an animal get away with, a dog get away with something that they're not supposed to do, it will continue. They don't do that. It'll escalate. They don't do that. They all have had training with behavioral training with dogs. All the girls that are worked there have been there for just about as long as I've taken my dog there. They're all very familiar with the dogs. They spot issues before they even arise. And so it's just a very well-run, safe place for me to bring my dog. I don't feel comfortable allowing my dog to stay at the vets with sick dogs. If I take her out to a place, a kennel she's never been, they don't know her. She goes every day, and I drop her off about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I usually pick her up about 6:30 at night. This is where she burns off her energy, and it would be nice to be able to take a vacation and leave her somewhere that I know she's safe. They know her habits. They would recognize if something was wrong well before someone else might notice. And so I really am hoping that you might find it in your heart to pass this. They work very hard. The dogs aren't out all day in the back. They own, especially in the summer. The dogs know it's hot outside. They go out, they go to the bathroom, and they come back in. Now, there may be several times a day when that happens, but typically not even typically, there are never dogs out there all day long. There are no dogs out there at 4 o'clock in the morning, as the gentleman mentioned. So it's just a really good business, and I want to see her succeed so that I can continue, along with other people, continue to be able to have a safe place for my dog. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we will now close the public portion of the meeting and open a discussion and entertain a motion. Do we have anybody who wishes to make a motion one way or the other? I can't do it.
We're going to be here a while.
I can't make a motion.
Make a decision one way or the other, gentlemen.
Motion to pass application number 13-57, a place for pups.
To what? I'm sorry.
To pass.
To pass, okay.
I'm going to take that as a motion to approve the application as submitted.
Yeah, approve, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I can...
Yes, go ahead. This is open for discussion.
I recognize that there's certainly a need for, even in an urban setting, to have overnight kennels for dogs. But I am concerned on the effect of the neighbors, especially there won't be anyone there watching the dogs during the nighttime. And I know how annoying it is if a dog in the neighborhood or close by is barking during the night when you're trying to sleep. So I'm very sympathetic to the neighbors. So it's a tough decision, but and I can sympathize with the owner that this would be a good service and there's a demand for the service. But I'm concerned about the closeness to the neighbors and the noise it might create for them during the nighttime. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Mr. Carr?
I see there's a need for it, and I understand for the business, but the way the code's written with the city, I think there could be an issue with that situation, if I'm not wrong. So.
You've got 7 criteria to consider. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can't approve this application despite it's not meeting the requirements of the code in terms of the 100-foot setback. On the other hand, my recommendation to boards of this nature is typically not do that. If fundamentally you're approving a variance that can't be acquired another way.
Mr. Zalakis.
Yeah, this application brings us a couple of things that are cross currents. We see the need for this type of use, and basically, at this point, to the applicant, you may need to find another location to do this. This location continues to have issues. I would recommend staff to maybe suggest, when this goes to the Board of Commissioners, looking at maybe seeing if other things can be considered by the Board of Adjustments in regards to variances, because, I mean, if we could look at the distance between where the actual edge of the kennel door is going to be to where the first house or mobile home is, that's probably 100 feet. So we're talking 100 feet property line. So I don't know. I just would like to say that maybe there should be something looked at, maybe other variances. So to me, that wasn't the issue. If they're there during the day and no one's really making big issues, and staff hasn't heard reports, the gentleman may say he's called the police or not called the police, but no evidence indicating any transgressions by either the previous owner or this current property owner. It leaves me to say, what's the difference between daylight and nighttime? Now, that's where I come into the issue. I'm not good with no one there. I'm not good with no one coming to monitor. I heard nothing in the monitoring system is going to monitor the dogs. All I heard was entries or security issues. Also, if we need something more, when I pulled up my book of 72, I'm not comfortable. I asked the lady about about number 6, about odor and pest control, and it says the applicant has not demonstrated any odor or pest control mechanism. She said, yeah, they don't, they clean up. Whereas number 11 in the code book, which is mislabeled in our report, number 12 in our report, says facility shall contain an air handling system for disinfecting and odor control. And our analysis says it complies with it, yet just above it says it doesn't. So I have concerns about the sanitation, I have concerns about monitoring, and things of that nature. To me, that is more of the issue as far as providing a safe place for the evening. So even though I seconded the motion for approval, it was mostly to get it on the table. At this point, I feel that I will have to vote no on the current application. I just wanted to state that it wasn't because of the distance issues. It was more of the other issues with regards to the odor control and monitoring of the animals after hours. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to bring up any points? If not, I'll call for the question.
Mr. Carr?
No.
Mr. Giuliosis?
No.
Mr. Dlakis?
No.
Mr. Vinson?
No.
Chairman Francis?
No. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next item of business is ordinance 2013-23, and this is Mr. Rodney's territory.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it, but in all seriousness, as you're probably aware, a lot of, with the recent changes in state legislation, many municipalities across the state have responded to the ability to have your dogs with you at restaurants by adopting what is commonly referred to as doggy dining ordinances. And there's been 10 such ordinances adopted here in the county. And the city commission discussed this at a few public hearings and thought it was a good idea, so they directed staff to go ahead and amend the land development code to allow Tarpon Springs restaurants to have dogs in certain areas. And so basically what this ordinance does is it would apply to all food service establishments with an outdoor area in the city. There's rules and regulations that those permit holders must follow. There's rules for employee interaction with the dogs, rules for where the dogs are allowed, sanitation, and signage. Basically, the dogs must be leashed at all times. They're not allowed on furniture and not allowed indoors or in undesignated outdoor locations. Violations are subject to permit revocation and code enforcement proceedings. These dog-friendly dining permits will require annual renewal and be non-transferable, nor will they run with the land. And there's administrative permit application process. And they would not be authorized for any sidewalk cafe locations either. But essentially what you have here is an ordinance that would allow restaurants to apply for a permit to allow dog dining in their outdoor areas as so designated, consistent with the criteria and the permit process. That's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take a stab at them.
Sure, Mr. Kern.
How much does the permit cost for this?
We haven't worked out the administrative part of it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be something minimal, less than $100, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay. On number B, it says the 3-year pilot program. Is that potentially going to change if the state changes their mind, or is that
Well, as with most things that the state legislature does every year, they could go ahead and amend or rescind that authority. The legislature has that ability. So, in 3 years, they could say we're going to, or not allow any more, dog dining in the state of Florida. So, I guess we just take a wait and see approach to that.
Was there a thought process of I know a dog could range from 2 pounds to 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any thought process behind that of issues or potential issues?
Our research yielded there wasn't any differentiation that we saw in other existing ordinances in the size or weight of dogs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zagis.
And on page 2 under the regulations under section 1, and I'm not sure, maybe the attorney, was a lot of this cut and paste from somebody else's ordinance?
My understanding this came from Pinellas County's ordinance.
Okay, because it says employees shall wash their hands promptly after touching, petting, or otherwise handling any dog, parentheses dogs, and shall wash their hands before entering other parts of the public food service establishment from the designated outdoor area. My question is, that last part after the and. So if an employee is entering another part of the food establishment from that designated outdoor area, but they didn't have contact with an animal, they still have to wash their hands every time they come in and out of a designated area? You're the attorney there, Jay. What do you say? Don't look at Rodney.
I didn't write the ordinance.
All right, so what's your interpretation then?
My interpretation is it says what it says. Can I see the wording?
Which says they shall wash their hands before entering other parts of the public food service establishment from the designated outdoor area. It's not talking about, separate like so is it every time they come in and out of a designated area to an indoor, they're going to have to wash their hands?
I believe that's what it says.
Well, then I would want to have that part in our ordinance amended so employees shall wash their hands promptly after touching, petting, or otherwise handling any dog.
Parenthetically, what I've seen done in other municipalities is, may I?
Say again?
If I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a matter of interpretation of the ordinance. It seems clearly worded to me. Whether it's good policy or not, I don't know. But I have seen other municipalities install the hand sanitizer. Little squeeze things.
Well, if you read the ordinance, they require that on all the tables.
Right.
For the patrons, so.
For the patrons, I'm talking about for the employees. If they're going to come in and out of the doggy dining area, that's not.
Well,
that's
I guess as someone who's worked in a restaurant and their permits are going to be contingent on some of this language, and even in the language, they have to post all these rules at the place. So I can see someone saying, shall wash their hands. Oh, well, they didn't wash their hands every time they're going in the designated area. So I would like to either reword that section so it's a little more clear that the requirement shall wash their hands if they've had any reactions with an animal. If they haven't had any reaction with an animal, just crossing through a designated doggy area seems to be a hindrance to the employees. And I'll tell you what, if I'm on a Saturday or people are out on a Saturday evening wanting their food and the waitress or the waiter has to stop every 2 minutes because they walk through a designated area to wash their hands or something, that's going to back orders up. It's going to, so I don't know. I'm just kind of, to me, that just kind of stuck out as a, maybe language copied and pasted. Maybe the intent, whoever originally did, was that if they've handled people, they have to do it. But I don't know. Maybe the board can think about it, and we can get back to that. The other thing that I had an issue with is on page 4. It talks about expiration and revocation, where it says permits expire on September 30th. So if someone buys a permit on August 1st, will that be prorated, or do they have to pay for a whole year?
No, it's prorated. That's consistent with all our local business tax applications. That's the expiration date.
Okay.
That is required renewal.
Then I noticed in paragraph 2, it talks about the permit being revoked, and then paragraph 3, if it's revoked, 180 days. I don't see anything in here about an appeal process where if, let's say, the person who has their permit revoked has any opportunity to appeal that revocation. So can we put a number 4 in there if the food establishment person, whoever the license holder wishes to appeal, they may appeal this to the Board of Adjustment or who they would do. But I don't see any appeal mechanism in here. Just pretty much the city can say, oh, well, we were revoking your permit, and there's no action the permit holder has to rectify that. So those were my 2 issues that I had with this. Otherwise, everything else pretty standard.
Well, I think if you read the rationale behind the revocation, Mr. Delakis, you'll see that the instances where a license or a permit will be revoked is if they fail to comply with condition of approval, fails to comply with the approved diagram, fails to maintain any required state or local license, or is found to be in violation of any provision of this section. And I think we have to be careful when we're looking at establishing this program, because internally we've had discussions about it's just human nature. If you're a waiter or waitress or in any situation, if you see a dog, most people want to go up and pet the dog, talk to it. And what we don't want to have happen is, you go from petting that dog to then handling someone's food, going back in the kitchen. So if we see those types of things going on, or the state sees that kind of thing going on, for the safety of the public, that permit should be revoked. And then, after they put policies and procedures in place, and 180 days have passed, and they come back and apply for that permit again. Again, I think the way that's worded and set up is to really err on the side of caution and cleanliness and sanitary practices and procedures. I'm not sure what you would appeal. It's pretty cut and dry as far as you are or you're not.
I appreciate that, but we also have a code enforcement board that offers appeal mechanisms to people who code says is not doing code. And I guess my thing is giving the permit holder at least an opportunity in some way to dispute the facts or evidence if they wish, especially if you're saying 180 days. I mean, there's no clause where if they've maybe rectified the issues, they can appeal and have that done shorter than 180 days. In essence, 6 months you're done and then come back and reapply. So, I don't know, to me it seems logical to have some sort of a safety appeal mechanism, especially if, 6 months pop. Thank you.
Mr. Vincent.
In that same section, it states a permit may be revoked by the city if, after notice and reasonable time in which the grounds for revocation may be corrected. And so, right there's the period of time that the establishment, once they receive notice, whether it's from code enforcement or I don't know who would be sending it besides the code enforcement officer, but they would have a reasonable time. Of course, what's reasonable may differ, but but they do have notice the next time.
Not necessarily. And you're right, Mr. Vincent. My experience with code enforcement has been they give potential violators plenty of time to come into compliance. What they want is compliance. They don't want to be punitive.
Right. And so I think the ordinance does address that and gives them notice to cure the defect or the wrongdoing. Of course, the question might arise if it's a habitual thing. That may be a different matter, but I think there is a provision there for them to cure rather than just have an employee petting a dog and walking in without washing their hands. It's not an automatic thing. They get notice and apparently an opportunity to be heard.
Due process.
Right. So I don't have a problem with that. Most of this language is taken from the statute. I pulled the statute down and read it. It's this 509.233, and the wording there, Mr. Delacus, that you first raised, and at the bottom of page 2, it's a little bit different than the statute. Maybe the city attorney or whoever's working on this ordinance can take a look at the wording there, because it's almost a mirror image. The wording is very close throughout this to the statute itself, the state statute. And so, just so there won't be a confusion, the wording does seem sort of awkward about washing the hands before you enter the rest of the establishment. If you didn't touch a dog that's out there, I don't think the employee should have to wash their hands necessarily.
Yeah,
if that's what's required.
I haven't read the legislative history on it, but if I recall correctly, there is concern that, ideally, as Mr. Delacus mentioned, the restaurant employees, they're moving very quickly through their day. If they want to get stuff done and make money, they're going to move very quickly. So I think there might be a legislative acknowledgement that every time someone touches a dog, it's not going to happen. They're not going to wash hands every single time. So they're going to say, okay, we're going to over legislate this, because if they touch the dog, don't wash your hands, and they go in the door, they grab the door handle, right? So now someone who hasn't touched the dog is going to grab that same door handle or whatever mechanism they're using to get back into the food service area. And so if you just make the blanket rule, hey, do it every time when you're in that dog area, or hey, you brushed your hand up against the dog, but you didn't really realize it. That's my understanding of why that was drafted the way that it was. But that doesn't mean that your ordinance necessarily needs to reflect it. It's just it's a fast-moving business, as you know.
Well, I think this may be a problem for the establishments that want to apply for that, because they're going to have some sort of facility right there before you get indoors, a little station to wash your hands, I guess, as employees coming into the entrance into the facility.
Yeah, as I said, and I listened to some of this debate during. I'm gathering some of this from Dunedin's deliberations on their ordinance. And so these are the things that are coming back to me a little bit. But so I have seen them use the hand sanitizing stations that you see in like hospitals and the like.
I do have an issue though with, on page 1 of the proposed ordinance, the second whereas clause states, whereas the city of Tarpon Springs wishes to allow dogs in outdoor areas of food service establishments at the discretion of the food service establishment. That wording to me sounds like it's an optional thing, any establishment can just say, I want to do it. What it ought to say is any establishment can apply for a permit. You know, it's an optional permit application, but they'd have to apply and get approved for a permit and go through all the hoops to place the signs and everything else. But just saying that, you know, they've got the discretion to allow dogs. It's only if they get the permit.
You have to have an outdoor area, though. It says outdoor area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course they have to have an outdoor area.
Yeah.
But it says at their discretion. But they've got to get a permit.
Well,
You
absolutely.
just decide, I've got an outdoor area, I want to have dogs here.
No, I know. You
have to
follow the guidelines. To me, I want to add. I have dogs, and I'm a healthcare provider, and I know about the transference of viruses and bacteria and so on. I've studied that for over close to 50 years now, and I teach at 3 places presently, and I've taken bacteriology courses, and I've had a lot of training, and there is no way this is clean. It's just not going to be clean. And I could sit there and I could write everybody up. And I don't know where this came from, but I don't think dogs belong there. And I'm a dog owner and a pet lover. It's just not clean. And I don't care what anybody says. I can nail them to the wall. We catch people in healthcare facilities who don't follow the rules. And you know what's on door handles? Are you kidding me? You know how many people don't wash their hands after they use the restroom? It's incredible. That's my personal and professional opinion that I've seen in my lifetime. This is dirty.
Well, and that's one reason that they're designated an area. If they go through there, the other patrons don't have to go out there to this area. I mean, if you are worried about that.
You still have those same servers. People are going to feed their dogs under the table. Dogs are going to lick their hands. They're going to grab the plates. The patron's going to grab the plates. And then the waiter comes and grabs that plate, takes it in, picks up the next order, and takes it to somebody inside the restaurant. And I guarantee you that'll happen. But I won't eat in a place like that. Period.
Well, I mean,
I don't care.
It's optional with the establishment. If they want to take the risk of having an adverse public, losing some of their patronage, it might not apply. But I don't know. I'm just giving you my opinion. That's all. I mean, you guys vote whatever you want.
I agree. It seems like it's going to be a pretty hard situation to keep separate. Not impossible, but I think almost impossible.
Can't hear you, John. Sorry.
What did you say?
I'm agreeing. I've done enough food service to know that it's hard to coordinate that kind of an effort and keep everybody clean and on the up and up. That's going to be difficult.
Yeah. They don't do it in healthcare facilities. You catch people all the time.
It seems like they're setting themselves up for issues.
Ready for a vote?
Yeah, let's just have one more question.
Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. Don't extend the meeting.
What? No, I just want... Rodney.
Yes.
So we're getting the ordinance for the doggy dining.
Mm-hmm.
How come we didn't see the ordinance for allowing chickens? That was a change in the Land Development Code, and we never saw that. That went straight to the board.
That was in the Code of Ordinances. Mhm.
What do you mean it was in the code of ordinances? So will this be?
No, the land development code is actually Appendix A of the city's code of ordinances. There's a, the code of ordinances,
Right.
a big,
Right.
what are we calling it?
So it's not in the land development
No, it's
code?
not in the land development
It's in a
code, no.
separate section, so it's not something,
That's
whereas
correct.
this is land development different?
And actually, the statute required that it be in the land development code for some strange reason. Because, this was originally intended to go into the code of ordinances like the chicken ordinance, but the statute stated that it had to be in the land development code.
Well, yeah, that's what I was wondering. We see in this one, we didn't see, okay.
That's why.
Thank you.
Very good. Call for the question, please.
Roll call.
We have to make a,
We need
we need
a motion.
Oh, let's have a motion.
A motion.
Let's have a motion. Who's gonna make the motion?
I move to approve, ordinance, 2013-23.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Carr?
yes.
Mr. Gialusis?
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Dwacka?
Yes, and I suggest they clean up the language on the, hand washing part there.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Chairman Prince?
No. Okay. Do you have any staff comments?
No, sir.
Board comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Briefly, back in May, maybe perhaps earlier, we talked about having an outdoor lighting ordinance developed, and I was just wondering if Rodney has any information on the status of that concept.
I think we need to workshop that one a little more. When we talked about it last time, I don't believe there was a consensus from the planning and zoning board on some of the specifics, the mechanics of it. But what I'll do for next month is I'll bring you a working draft so that we can mark up, and then if we can get everybody to agree to the content of that, then we'll schedule it for a discussion item with the city commission, and if they are on board with it, then we'll go ahead and advertise it for public hearing. So you'll see a working draft of it for the October P&Z.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question about electrical signage and storefronts. Is there something to do with that issue? You're looking at, is there a city code involved with that? Like when, you have new businesses or someone, you approve a sign for the business, but then they put a huge sign in the storefront window all lit up at night and so on?
Yes, there is an exemption in the sign ordinance for window signs. So they don't have to comply with, size restrictions,
Right,
any of that sort of, you're right.
Can we ask the commission to visit that issue? I think, we're trying to, the city is trying to do, and the merchants are trying to, enhance the downtown experience. And I think I know what sign you're talking about. It's the brightest one on Tarpon Avenue at nighttime, and it's in a window, and it's inside, but it's huge and it's bright. And, I think it detracts from the ambiance, and I think the commission needs to look at that ordinance, or we do, and get it to the commission.
That's a good point. Would that come under the lighting ordinance?
Yeah, that's one of the things we
Is
need
that
to workshop.
something we can- but
illumination.
It is illumination, but
Yeah.
why wouldn't that be why can't that be included? If it's glaring and it's...
Yeah, I'll talk to Ms. Vincent about that tomorrow.
Well, it's also with regards to the electronic signboard. There's only a few places that have, permission to do that, and those technically are electronic signboards. They may be inside, but, in fact, I think a business across the street from the big one has one now, too.
Oh,
right in if we don't do something about it.
Well, we know if they disappear, we know who to call. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.